Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It is the Mind Killer here with another patch notes update. This time it is Season 8, so get excited. If you haven't watched our patch notes updates before, I'm just running through the patch notes that were posted earlier today, and we are doing it down and dirty style. We don't care about the skins. We don't care about bug fixes. We don't care about stuff like that. DLC. If you want to go look at that stuff and pay for that, do that. That's fine. We are here for the actual changes to gameplay, to the things that will impact us in that way. So things like there's new quality of life stuff, including a new tutorial system, new UI changes, that kind of stuff. You can go look at that on your own time. The first thing we need to talk about is the new healing rules. This is huge. It's going to be a big deal for Season 8. This is going to impact the meta a lot, so you need to pay attention to it because it also won't be obvious when you're in-game. But there is now a global anti-healing aura. When you are not brawling, your ability in lifesteal healing is reduced by 30%. A god is considered brawling if they have damaged or applied crowd control or taken damage or crowd control in the last 4 seconds. So basically this is talking about out of combat healing. It will not be as powerful on all gods across all abilities, and that pretty much includes everything that heals. Anti-heal item changes. They are going to be decreasing on Divine Ruin, the main anti-heal for mages. They are decreasing the anti-healing to 35% and the duration to 6 seconds. Brawler's Beatstick is decreasing the anti-healing and getting the duration reduced. Same thing. Toxic Blade, decreasing the anti-heal per stack to 17.5% and decreasing the duration from 8 to 6 seconds. Pestilence and Contagion are the anti-heal aura items, the only two anti-heal items that don't stack. Their auras are being decreased to 20% from 25%. Cursed Ankh is getting a decrease in anti-healing to 45% and a decreased duration from 10 to 6 seconds. Cursed Ankh Upgrade is also getting a nerf. Shadow Steel Shuriken, the crit item that is anti-healing, has a decrease to 35% and a decrease from 8 seconds to 6 seconds. And it's getting some other updates too later on. We'll get to that. Rod of Healing and Rod of Asclepius are actually getting increased healing from 5 to 10% and then 10 to 20% on the tier 3. It no longer increases by 5 or 15% when taking or dealing damage. And Chad's Shield is getting increased healing from 10 to 20% and no longer increases by 15 when taking or dealing damage. This is really important. They are nerfing a lot of the anti-healing because they are nerfing healing across the board. That's going to really impact some early game gods like Ra. You know, Ra right now is super good. He is banned a lot. He's played a lot. He can do things like take his red buff when other mages can't because the red buff earlier this season really screwed over some mages. He can do a lot of that stuff. He's not going to be able to do that probably as well. So anti-healing, very big. Jungle camp vision changes. Gods that visit a jungle camp on their side of the map will now receive vision of the in-world and mini-map respawn timers for that camp. This is granted even if the camp was invaded and cleared by the enemy. That is huge. Getting timers on a jungle camp is one of the key kind of meta strategies when you're playing Conquest. Being able to invade their camp and then deny them the timer so that you can just keep taking it is huge. You won't be able to do that anymore. So that's going to change some things. Now, Conquest is very new. They are doing a whole new Conquest map. It is wider. It is taller. It is more packed with more jungle camps. And pretty much the only thing they removed was the jungle totem, which, just gives you gold now anyway. But they've added a lot more camps so that it's going to make up for that gold in a big way. So one thing they're talking about is that this is a living Conquest map. So not only are they getting a completely revamped, completely brand new map, but throughout the season, they're going to change it so that it evolves over time. Each update is going to have a specific theme, and it's going to have art and design updates. So this is going to be pretty crazy. Now, the new layout, wider map from lane to lane, longer map from base to base, completely rework the jungle with more variance in its paths and geometry. Some paths are especially narrow and others are much wider. New camps and different camp locations. I've seen some people playing it. It's available on PTS already, and the new map is you're gonna feel like on some cases that you're walking down an 8-lane highway. It's just so huge, so it's pretty nuts. All right, and the art is very different too. There's a lot more art. In fact, it kind of felt like Clash the first time I saw it, but it's just completely different. All right, and then all the spawn times and jungle monster stats and objectives have all changed. There's a huge list there that you can go click on if you want to go check that out. We're not going to go through all of it, but it's just a different map. It's completely different. And they're all new objectives. Here are some of the new objectives. There's a new NPC called the Greater Scorpion. He spawns near the Fire Giant. Two of them. One spawns near the Gold Fury, one spawns near the Fire Giant. And they have very unique bonuses when you kill them. While alive, these monsters prevent the spawn of both the major neutral bosses, the Gold Fury and the Fire Giant. After a Greater Scorpion is slain, its spawn location will move deeper into the enemy jungle, depending on which team secured the kill. Slaying a Greater Scorpion will enhance your buff camps on the side of the map where it was killed. These camps drop enhanced buffs that provide additional bonuses. So, if you kill the Gold Fury Greater Scorpion, it will move closer to the enemy so that the enemy has a chance to kill it when it respawns. But for killing it, you get an enhanced red buff and an enhanced purple buff the next time they spawn, right? Or if they're already spawned, it'll enhance them. So you get extra, sort of on the damage buff, you'll get extra 7% physical and magical lifesteal. The speed buff will get a CCR bonus, things like that. The mana buff gets an increased CDR bonus and provides 10% increased maximum mana. And the enhanced void buff increases your attack speed from 10 to 25%, which is pretty nuts for a hunter. And the new NPC called the Lesser Scorpion actually spawns in lane, and there are 2 in the duo lane and 1 in the solo lane. These are downed when their HP bar is depleted and require 3 more hits to secure the kill for the golden XP. Oh, that's crazy. There's going to be big fights over these. While in their down state, they emit a healing aura that heals 20 HP per second for a maximum of 10 seconds. That's pretty nuts. So what's going to happen is you knock it down, and then the enemy has to finish it off, right? Something like that, to stop it from healing. But that's going to be a whole new strategy. Like, do you down it for the HP? Do you steal theirs so they can't heal? That kind of thing. It's going to be crazy. Base gates. Smite is going to have Smite's first dynamic geometry is being added to the Season 8 Conquest map. These doors will act like a jungle wall when closed and a jungle path when opened. Each base has 2 doors nestled in the walls between the phoenixes and are useful shortcuts into the jungle. These doors will open when a god sets foot on a specific area inside the base. Doors cannot be opened from the outside, but gods, including enemies, can leap or blink over walls to open them. Players attempting to open enemy doors from the inside will be afflicted with Invader's Curse and will need to stand on the trigger for longer to open the door. That's going to be so interesting. Base fights are going to be so weird with these gates that can only open from one side. People are going to be diving it to try and open it to get the whole team in there, things like that. The fountain. While all the phoenixes are alive, gods will now receive reinvigoration when exiting their fountain. Increases out-of-combat movement speed by 40% and lasts 5 seconds. Basically, this is a pyromancer buff that is active anytime all phoenixes are alive. And it will still be enhanced by pyromancer kills. So you'll get even more movement speed if you kill the pyromancer. Jungle. All buff camps now spawn at 20 seconds. All mid-harpy camps now spawn at 35 seconds. Increased mid-harpy respawn time to 120 seconds. No more jungle shrine, we mentioned that. Invader's Curse encompasses all buff camps until 1 minute. Void camp. Reworked Void Sludge. Now stacks up to 3 times, applies 5% protection reduction. Reduced ability cooldown from 30 to 7 seconds. Debuff lifetime reduced from 20 to 10 seconds. No longer lowers your targeting priority from other minions. Interesting. All right. This is the next big change. Starter items. They are removing blessings. They are adding starter items that can be purchased at level 1. And each starter item can be upgraded in one of 2 ways. And you can't upgrade it either until level 20 or until level 17 for the support starter items. Once you have left the fountain with a starter item, it is the only starter item you can get that game. Starter items do not have class lock restrictions. The only restrictions are based on the power type they provide. So if it only provides physical power, a mage can't build it. That's what it's saying. The jungle-focused starter items are unavailable in non-conquest modes. Okay. So a lot of these are older items from like Season 4 and before, and so you may recognize some of the names, but they're very, very different items, so don't get confused by the names. They do similar things, but again, each of these, see, it starts as Death's Toll, right? It's a standard carry starter item, but this can be upgraded. It can be upgraded to Death's Embrace or Death's Temper, and it does other things. So I'm not going to go into everything that the advanced versions do, but we'll talk about what it does at the beginning. Because you're going to need to know these. You're going to need to know what to pick up in the new Conquest map. So Death's Toll restores health and mana for landing basic attacks. Okay? Which is what Death's Toll used to do, basically. And it says standard carry starter item. They split these up into classes, but for example, Osiris is definitely going to get Death's Toll. He got it before. He'll get it again. Gilded Arrow marks a minion for a bounty every 10 seconds. And then you last hit to claim that bounty. So if gold is really important to you, you can grab this and make sure that you're last hitting these minions. And then it can upgrade to Diamond Arrow or Ornate Arrow. There's just so much, never mind. We're going to go through the upgrades because that's what this is all about, right? And I feel like I'd be cutting you off if I didn't. So when you have Death's Toll, let's go back to Death's Toll. It restores health and mana for landing basic attacks. If you upgrade to Death's Embrace, it will restore even more health and mana for landing basic attacks. If you upgrade to Death's Temper instead, it will slay enemies. You can slay enemies to gain basic attack damage. So you'll still get the basic health and mana restoration, but then you get basic attack damage. Gilded Arrow. After you mark a minion and last hit to claim the bounty, you can upgrade to Diamond Arrow, which means defeating anything provides that bounty. Or upgrade to Ornate Arrow, which gains bonus stats for all your unspent gold. That's an interesting upgrade. So, for example, near the end of the game, instead of building up for a power pot, you're going for, a power pot, a 3K pot, which costs 3,000 gold. You save that money because you have Ornate Arrow, and that money is giving you bonus stats for all that unspent gold. This is really, it's kind of risky at level 20, but if you think that the game's going really late, this could be really, really valuable in the super late game. Or if you're just ahead and you don't want to go back to base all the time, so you're gathering 3K before you go back to base, it could be good for that too. I don't know. So here's Leather Cowl. It's a utility carry starter item. While alone, you will gain movement speed. While near an ally, you gain attack speed. Can be upgraded to Hunter's Cowl, which gives you more movement speed when you're alone and provides an attack speed aura when you're around allies. Or Leader's Cowl, which provides bonus power while your team outnumbers your enemies. Another very interesting upgrade. This is the safer upgrade for sure. But this one is interesting because if you're hunting people down in the jungle or you're finding the other team isn't grouping up and your team is, this could make a huge difference and help you push on those team fights when the other team has a split pusher or something like that. Solo starter items. Warrior's Axe, the standard solo starter item. Steal flat health away from your opponents after damaging them. If you upgrade to Sundering Axe, you can steal a portion of their current health from your opponents after damaging them. And Hero's Axe, protect crowd-controlled allies with a shield. That one sounds really cool to me. Just imagine the enemy solo lane shock blinks in and ults your whole team, and you have Hero's Axe. You're going to give your team a shield when they get knocked up. That's kind of crazy. Bluestone Pendant. A lot of people have been talking about this one since they announced it was coming back. And it is definitely the same Bluestone Pendant you remembered, but it can be upgraded now. So this is an aggressive solo starter item. You'll see this on gods like Sun Wukong. It applies damage over time to enemies hit by your abilities. It can be upgraded to Bluestone Brooch, which applies a % health damage over time to enemies hit by your abilities. So instead of just regular damage over time, it's % health based, which can be really important when you're going against a super tanky solo laner who's built a lot of health. Corrupted Bluestone. For every enemy hit by your damage over time, gain attack speed. That'll be interesting on some gods. Bellona, for example, might do well with that. And here we have Warding Sigil. You gain flat damage reduction when hit by abilities. You can upgrade to Sigil of the Old Guard, which gains percentage damage reduction when hit by abilities. Instead of flat, you get a %, which is even better. And we found, even in Season 7, % damage reduction has been huge. Oni Hunter's Garb, Spirit Robe, the passives on those have been super important at different times. Infused Sigil. Accumulate stacks when hit by abilities. Explode for damage when enough abilities are accumulated. Pretty self-explanatory. Blow them up. All right, here are the mid-starter items with some names you'll remember as well if you've been playing for a while. Vampiric Shroud. Restore health and mana when your abilities deal damage. Upgrade to Blood-Soaked Shroud, which restores more health and mana and gains stack of bonus lifesteal when your abilities deal damage, which is kind of nuts. You get some lifesteal in there. Sacrificial Shroud. Your abilities do more damage but cost health in addition to their mana. That'll be interesting. That is kind of like what Thanatos does, right? Thanatos uses mana and health to cast his abilities. So that'll be like a smaller version of his passive, basically, for mages. But if it does enough damage, if it does more super damage, it'll probably be worth it. Sands of Time is a cooldown starter item. You gain additional MP5 as you get low on mana, and it can be upgraded to Pendulum of Ages. Gain more MP5 as you get low on mana. Gain additional power as you stay high on mana. So you'll get the MP5 when you're low, and then you'll gain more power when you're not low, which is a great way to start a fight. Or you can upgrade to the alternate timeline. When you would die, you jump to an alternate timeline where you would instead lived. That one kind of sounds broken. That's a revive, a resurrect. We'll have to see how that works. We'll have to see what the cooldown is on that. It's basically like a Chronosalt. We'll see. That's kind of nuts. Conduit Gem. You accumulate stacks that are consumed when your abilities hit, dealing bonus damage. Can be upgraded to Archmage's Gem, which accumulates stacks that are consumed when your abilities hit, dealing more bonus damage. Or you go with Gem of Focus. Each time you cast an ability, gain up to 3 stacks of focus. So you have to keep, with Gem of Focus, you just have to keep fighting, right? The more you fight, the more you can maintain your stacks. You will lose all your focus if you fail to continuously cast. That'll be really important on gods with a lot of abilities like Merlin, or gods with quick abilities like Agni. We'll see how that works out. Here are the jungle starters. Bumba's Dagger. Deal bonus damage to jungle monsters. Restore health and mana when jungle monsters are defeated. Can be upgraded to Bumba's Spear. That deals massive damage to jungle monsters, bosses, and structures, and restores more health and mana when they're defeated. This seems like the one you're going to want to go to if you're pushing objectives like the Gold Fury or the Fire Giant or the Scorpions or whatever. Or Bumba's Hammer. When you cast an ability, your next basic attack does bonus true damage, and when you hit this basic attack, your ability cooldowns are reduced by 1 second. So first of all, this starts with weaving auto attacks and abilities, which most assassins do to some degree anyway, and then it adds cooldown reduction when you do that successfully. That would be really huge on gods like Ratatoskr, Susano, these gods that really depend on getting their abilities back up and do a lot of basic attack weaving, auto attack canceling, and that kind of thing. So I imagine, like, I can already see myself picking this up on Ratatoskr just to do that weaving in and out, get his dash up even more, because Rat already reduces his abilities by 1 second through his passive. So it'll be good cooldown for him. Eye of the Jungle. This is one we saw picked up. They did a sort of exhibition game on the new map, and we saw a couple of assassins pick this one up. It gives you free wards. When you slay a large jungle monster, you get a 30-second ward where it dies. If you upgrade to Seer of the Jungle, you gain the ability to see wards temporarily. So at first, you just get a regular ward. With Seer of the Jungle, you get a sentry ward, which is crazy. Protector of the Jungle gains bonus power and protections while in the jungle. Also crazy. If you're doing a lot of your fighting in the jungle and not in lane, that'll be pretty important. Mannequin Scepter. This is based on apparently an old beta item, which I wasn't around for. So, damaging an enemy applies the damage over time and slows their attack speed. This damage is extra effective against jungle monsters. Upgrade to Mannequin's Mace. Damage an enemy applies a stronger damage over time and slows their attack speed more. This damage is incredibly effective against jungle monsters and bosses. Or the Mannequin Hidden Blade. Hitting a target you have not recently been hit or dealt damage provides a large burst of damage on the target. This is similar to a Willix. A Willix is passive, where if she hasn't done damage in a while, she gets a little bonus on her first attack. That's kind of what this is. Sentinel's Gift. Used to be called Watcher's Gift, and it's a little different now, but it's basically the same. Getting an assist restores health and mana and provides bonus gold. Ganesh is going to love this one. Can be upgraded to Sentinel's Boon, which restores percentage health and mana and provides even more gold, which is going to be pretty important. Before we get further into this, these are the support starters, and support starters are a little different in that they can be upgraded at level 17 instead of 20, which is going to be huge for supports who are usually behind in levels. Sentinel's Embrace provides a large amount of protections, which split evenly among all nearby allies. Benevolence. Gain passive golden XP, which kind of sounds messed up, but a portion of the XP and gold you gain is lost to you. If an ally is nearby, you provide it to them instead. So if you're killing things, you're going to only get about 90% of what you would have normally gotten. If an ally is there, they can take that 10%. Is essentially how it was explained in the patch notes. So you gain passive XP and gold the whole time too. So that's going to be interesting to see how balanced that is. Upgrade to Compassion, and a portion of damage taken by allies is redirected to you, so you can take damage that your allies should have taken. That's interesting. Or get Animosity, where your basic attacks deal extra damage based on your health. Structures take significantly more from this effect. That'll be a very situational one, and will depend on what god you're playing, but it could mean some pretty big things, especially if you're playing a guardian or a warrior that does a lot of that has a lot of health, that can build a huge health pool. You'll deal extra damage, and you'll be able to take down structures, which is pretty crazy. War Flag. Getting an assist restores health and mana to all nearby allies and provides a boost to their movement speed and attack speed. This is very similar to Sentinel's Gift, except that it's a lot more aggressive in how you're going to use it. So, can be upgraded to War Banner, which gives does percent health and mana. Also similar to Sentinel's Gift, it upgrades you from just flat health and mana to percent, and boosts movement and attack speed even more. The Spartan Flag upgrade, damaging an enemy drops a Spartan Flag, providing power to allies who stand near it. This is a great way to target people in a team fight. If you go in first, target somebody with the Spartan Flag, it drops a flag. Your teammates can see that flag, jump on it, get a power boost, and kill the guy you're going after. Very cool. And then there's this neutral starter. Okay. It's called Tainted Steel. Enemies hit by your damaging abilities have their healing reduced. Basically more anti-healing. And that can be pretty important if you're going into a team comp that's obviously centered around healing. Maybe you get this early instead. You can upgrade to Tainted Breastplate. Enemies hit by your damaging abilities have their healing reduced more. Or Tainted Amulet. Enemies hit by your damaging abilities have their healing reduced. Healing reduced this way is transferred to you, so you can steal their healing. So, we won't go through all of the individual stats, but they pretty much are exactly what you would expect from them. Each costs 700 gold at first, and then you have to upgrade for a total of 2,200 gold on basically the tier 3 item. Which you can't get until level 20 or level 17. So that's crazy. All right. As you can see, there is a lot to go through on that. These individual stats are pretty important to look at, and they'll definitely determine who picks up what where, even if you're not picking them up in the role they were designed for or whatever. They've said that in the patch notes. They don't want these stuck to a certain role. Obviously, some will be. The support ones are most likely going to stay with supports. But like Death's Toll could be picked up by a hunter or a warrior. Some of the jungle ones could be picked up by the solo laner. The Eye of the Jungle one that gives you a free ward, that would be pretty good on a solo laner, especially with all the new junglers, the new jungle monsters. So in addition to that, they have balanced some of the items, especially late game items and other relics. For example, Elixir of Power, the 3k pot, now provides 10% penetration. And Elixir of Defense provides 5% damage mitigation and 20% crowd control reduction. So that incentivizes you to go for those a lot more, especially if you've got that one starter item that, you get power based on your unspent gold. Shield of Thorns, they nerfed it. Nerfed the damage reflect to 30%, and the cap of the damage they nerfed from 150 times your level to 120 times your level. Basically, they talked about this a lot in the patch notes, that it's kind of a love-hate relationship with this item, that some people love it, some people hate it, but they think it has its place and it needs to stay there. They adjusted this tree with Witchblade, Wingblade, and Relic Dagger. Now, Witchblade is not going to be on the right tree. These three items are going to be built off the same tree, built off the Adventurer's Blade. And Witchblade has been changed so it no longer has attack speed, and now it provides 30 physical protections. And the increased attack speed reduction aura is up to 25%. So that has a very significant change. The physical protections is going to make it a lot more appealing to warriors and guardians. And if the other stats are the same, it still has cooldown reduction on it, which is important, and health. So there you go. Winged Blade will now have magical protection. So you're going to be able to choose between physical or magical, or maybe get both. And it has a decreased health from 300 to 250 because Relic Dagger is going to be the health item, and that one is increased to 350 and now has 10% CCR. Emperor's Armor has an increased physical protections from 50 to 60, just to give this. It's already a situational item, so now they're just trying to make it more in line with the other things so you can pick based on the situation. Talisman of Energy has an interesting change. Now provides maximum stacks on a god, death, or assist. Before, the way Talisman of Energy worked, it gave you, I can't remember everything it does. I think it's movement speed and attack speed and something else, based on kills, like minion deaths. And that would work with gods too, but the problem is, if you're fighting over the fire giant and you haven't been anywhere near a lane in a while, Talisman of Energy is not doing anything for you because you can't stack the passive. Even if you kill a god, you only get one stack. So now it's giving you maximum stacks when you kill a god. So if you're fighting at the fire giant, you can get the full benefit of this passive, which makes it a much more appealing item. And here we go, assassin item adjustments. You know me, I'm a jungler. I love the assassin item stuff. I think this is crazy that they buffed Jotun's Wrath. They're buffing it with physical power from 40 to 50. Not that it doesn't need it, because it's definitely falling out of favor. But this has been such a staple item, such a core item of the Assassins, that it's kind of nuts to see it getting buffed. So we'll definitely be seeing that a lot more. Obviously, there's some gods that you built it on anyway, even when it wasn't buffed. Stone Cutting Sword, they decreased the cost to 2350. Also interesting to me because I've been seeing this get picked up a lot more now, especially on auto attack gods like Nemesis and Mercury, where usually you would pick up Golden Katana first item, and that got nerfed a little bit, and then people kind of realized they didn't really need it, and so they've been picking up Stone Cutting Sword early. Now that it's being nerfed or buffed with a decreased cost, it's definitely going to be picked up a lot more. It's a very good item. Berserker's Shield. So they talked about in the patch notes show how they wanted to shift some of the hybrid items to make them more appealing to different classes in different ways. Berserker's Shield is getting decreased physical protections, increased power, and increased power from the Berserk passive to make it this more appealing to junglers. So that'll be interesting. We'll definitely see that picked up a lot more. Probably the people who pick it up now are like Bologna in the solo lane. Probably won't see that as much with the decrease in the physical protections. So Anchile is getting a nerf, decreased magical protection from 50 to 30, increased physical power from 40 to 60. So it's kind of a shift. A shift from defense to more hybrid power item. The Warded Shield has been decreased in cost to 1150 to make getting this online a little easier. But the tier 3 item cost hasn't changed. Just you'll be able to pick this up a little bit earlier. So that's interesting. Serrated Edge, an interesting item that kind of became situational. I think they nerfed it a little bit and it kind of fell off. But it wasn't a terrible item. And now it's going to be a little bit better. Now provides 10 physical power per stack and no longer provides 10 basic attack power per stack. I think physical power is better. Obviously, basic attack power appeals to gods like Kali, that might build it, or Nemesis. But physical power appeals to all assassins pretty much, making it giving it a wider range of who it appeals to, which is great. Celestial Legion Helm also got a bit of a buff from 60 to 70 magical power to make that more appealing to mids. They want mid mages to be building that item. Spear of Desolation. This one is crazy. So before, Spear of Desolation just did, if you got a kill or assist on an enemy god, it reduced your non-ultimate cooldowns by 2 seconds. Now, it will also decrease your ultimate by 8 seconds. That's crazy. That's so good. Can you imagine that on a god like Ra, who already has a 30-second cooldown? Or Merlin, who wants to stance switch even more? They'll both be able to use Spear of Desolation. And in a team fight, when they're getting kills or assists and they're getting that ultimate reduced, that's going to be pretty big. And this is already a pretty decent item. It has pretty good stats. And I've picked it up on a few. Like, I think the Morgan's the only one where I really picked it up a lot because I really liked it on her. And it's great for the Morgan, too, because her cooldowns are so long. So Spear of Desolation, you're going to see that more for sure. Obsidian Shard as well is getting a buff. Magical power from 70 to 80. Already a pretty decent item. Just giving it a little love. Polynomicon getting increased magical power from 85 to 95. Oh, interesting. So Charon's Coin isn't getting a buff or nerf, but they added new art. So green heads means HP 5. Yellow tails means movement speed. So you'll be able to see on your UI which ones you have the most of. Soul Reavers kind of getting a change. They're removing the penetration, decreasing the cost, and increasing the % health damage. So it's kind of a shift. Not really enough, not a nerf or a buff because it's a little bit of both. But definitely the decreased cost will be interesting. You'll probably see that picked up more. Rod of Tahuti is instead getting Soul Reaver's 10% magical penetration. This item, I guess, wasn't being picked up enough, even though it's still pretty powerful. So now with that penetration, you're definitely going to see it a lot. So here we go with, because the new Conquest map is taller and wider, they did the same thing when they released this new map 3 years ago, or 3 seasons ago. They nerfed a lot of global alts and movement speed because they were worried about gods with those things having a better advantage on the new map. So that's what they're doing here. Doom Orb has been in the meta for quite some time. It's early pickup for most mages these days. Goes really well with gods like Ra, who already have movement speed, and Poseidon. So they are decreasing the movement speed on Cursed and Doom Orb. They doing a increased magical power per stack to make up for that, but definitely decreasing the max stack count and the movement speed. Shifter's Shield, increased physical protection from 15 to 25. Increased protections gained while under 75% health from 35 to 40, and decreased the cost. So this, in the way that Berserker Shield was shifted to be more for assassins and aggressive players, this is being shifted more towards tanks. So maybe you'll see Bologna pick this up instead of Berserkers. I don't know. We'll see how that works. Frostbound Hammers getting a buff. Increased physical power from 25 to 35, and increased attack speed reduction from 15 to 25%. It's already kind of a niche item. The slow can be pretty frustrating. Not a lot of gods really pick this up unless, you're messing around or whatever. But the increased buff might definitely get it more play. Rune Forged Hammer. increased health to 250, decreased the power to 40, increased the passive damage increase to 20%. So we'll have to see how that works. Runeforged Hammer, you get more damage when they're CC'd, right? So now it's going to be 20% more damage, which is kind of nuts. Which is why they decreased the power. So overall, this is definitely a buff, for sure. The Sledge decreased health from 300 to 250, decreased the protections per stack from 10 to 8. Poor Sledge. It was so big, so in the meta for so long. They had to get rid of it. Feels bad. They've also nerfed Shield of Regrowth. Similar thing. They decreased the movement speed on the passive from 40 to 30% because of the bigger map. Hunter item adjustments. They have a whole new item for hunters called Dominance. It is a 2,500 gold item, has 55 physical power, 200 mana, 20 MP5, and 10% physical penetration. This is supposed to be a new alternative for penetration. They want more penetration options for hunters. And you can tell that from the passive, which is your basic attacks benefit from an additional 10% physical penetration. In the same vein, Atlantis Bow was the core penetration item, so they've nerfed it. It will now only do 10% instead of 20%, and they decrease the cost to make up for it. Still a good item. Still should see it picked up quite frequently, but for at least the last few months, it's been pretty core to go Atlantis Bow at some point in your build as a hunter. So maybe it might not be as core anymore. We'll see. Executioner got buffed. Increased the maximum count from 3 to 4, which means you go from 21 to 28% penetration total, which honestly, it never made sense to me to pick up Executioner. The only real reason to pick up Executioner was to provide penetration for your team, but the penetration wasn't much more than Atalanta's, and Atalanta's stats were a lot better. So pretty much always got Atalanta's over Executioner, but now we're seeing it getting buffed and Atalanta's getting nerfed. Executioner should come back into the meta. All right. They're doing some changes to crit items here. This is the tier 2 of Wind Demon, 8-pointed Shuriken. It no longer has a critical strike chance. It has increased power and decreased cost, which is interesting. I don't really like that. It makes it hard to build into something like Wind Demon then, if you can't get that crit chance on the tier 2, because you almost want to save for the full item then. I don't know. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how that works out. Also, the lower tiers of Rage and Deathbringer, Hidden Dagger, and Short Sword will no longer have crit chance, which is kind of nuts, man. It's going to be really hard to convince anybody to build into crit when they can't get crit until they've built the full item, right? That's a huge investment to get crit. They're increasing the physical power, but I'm not sure that's going to make much of a difference. Rage is getting an increase in physical power from 20 to 30 and an increased cost from 2,400 to 2,500. Deathbringer is getting increased physical power from 40 to 50. That might be the first time in like 3 years that they buffed Deathbringer. It's almost always getting nerfed, so that's interesting. Shadow Steel Shuriken, which is the anti-heal crit item, getting increased physical power and increased attack speed to 15%. And, you know, it had the other changes about anti-healing up above. Wind Demon is getting increased critical strike chance from 15 to 20%. Poison Star is getting a decreased cost and decreased poison slow from 15 to 10%. Some weird changes to crit. We're going to see how this affects the meta, because I feel like it's going to affect it. Because I feel like if you're going into crit, you want to get at least some crit online. It's going to be really tough. I wonder how this is going to affect Mercury, too. So, interesting. God balance. Here we go. Lots of God balance changes. Giannis is getting sort of a minor rework. He's basically the same, but they're adding some changes that'll make him more effective. So, players falling from a Giannis portal can now be damaged before they hit the ground. Previously, you kind of had to time the way they fell, right? You had to wait for them to hit the ground to hit your 2. which is apparently inconsistent with other banish effects. So this is mostly consistency change, but it's definitely a buff for Giannis players. And it now has a different sound, so it's not as the same as Blink. Unstable Vortex is the coolest change here. They have now made it so that the middle part of the vortex damages enemies, so you can't accidentally miss your target. You'll still get double damage if you hit at the points, but you won't be punished for completely missing anymore. And they've changed the visual effect to add with little chains of energy so that you can see that they'll be hitting now. So that's very cool for Giannis. Through space and time, this ability can now only ever deal up to 75% of a target's max health. It doesn't say max health, but it should. People were kind of upset with this because kind of the cool idea of this ult is that you can snipe people from far away, and if you can't kill them, then what's the point? But you can kill them. It's 75% of their max health. It is going to be a bit of a nerf, but it's not as bad as people think. The ability's audio has been adjusted to be more audible as it travels. Okay, so here we go. I talked to you before about how they want to nerf some of the movement speed that a lot of these gods have. Here it is. Here are some of those nerfs. Bakasura has a decreased movement speed from 7% to 5% per stack. Ra's passive decreased movement speed from 6 to 5%. Poseidon's 2, Changing Tides, decreased movement speed from 15 to 10%. Actually, that's his passive, right? Yeah. Sorry, that's his passive, not his 2. Agni, Combustion. Basic attacking a god now provides 2 stacks. So this is similar to the Talisman of Energy change, where when you're away from minions, you couldn't really stack it. Agni was the same thing. If he's fighting at the fire giant and he's not anywhere near minions, he can't really stack his passive. So now you can basic attack a god to stack your passive. Chernobog, he gets a buff to Vicious Barrage, increased attack speed, especially at the beginning, from 20 to 40%. The max is still 60%, and decreased mana cost, which is good because it's often used in conjunction with his 1, so they didn't want him going through all his mana with 2 abilities. Chiron has a change to his passive. It now provides power to allies being healed. 5 plus 1 per level physical power, 10 plus 2 per level of magical power. Kronos gets a buff. Oh, look at Kronos with his little buff. Increased attack speed per level from 0.8 to 1.5. Increased scaling on stop time from 40 to 45%. Dan's Burrito. He's getting a little nerf. Decreased bonus power from his pouches from 10 to 6. That's his passive. And Fool's Gold. Decreased the base damage. And decreased damage from subsequent hits of the money bags and explosions from 20% to 15%. So just a little nerf. Not too bad. He should still be pretty effective. We'll still see him a lot. My boy Fenrir getting a buff. Fenrir, the great doggo. Unchained is getting increased physical power scaling from 80 to 95%. Seething Howl immediately gives you 2 unbound runes upon cast. This will probably be much better incentive for getting this early. A lot of junglers who play Fenrir will skip Seething Howl and just go maximize Unchained and Brutalized for the better damage. But getting your passive up without having to hit as many minions will be pretty important. Brutalized increased AoE damage from 50% of brutalized damage to 60% of brutalized damage. Although they misspelled brutalized and they said brutalized. So Fenrir is getting a lot of love. That's good. Hachi is also getting a bit of a buff. Decreased cooldown from 14 to 12 seconds on his 1 Eagle Eye, which lets him kind of sharpshoot his basic attacks, 3 basic attacks. That'll be really important. 12 seconds in a team fight, it'll be really important. He can start the fight and then get those back up. Mounted Archery had this thing where as it was coming to an end, you could cast your abilities before the animation ended. Which is, they're adjusting it so you can't do that, which is kind of a nerf for him. But, you know, it'll be more consistent when you're fighting him onto what that looks like. Hercules getting a bit of a buff here, especially since they nerf some of his items like Shield of Regrowth. Earthbreaker is getting increased damage from 80 to 260 to 90 to 290. So it's getting early game buff and a late game buff. and 50% of your physical power to 60% of your physical power. Also pretty important. Izanami had a weird change, and I'm not sure how this is going to affect her, but basically they wanted to make her basic attacks more consistent with her attack speed. So they want, basically right now when she gets really high attack speed, you can't really follow her sickles as they're coming back and forth. There's like a million sickles out there. So now they've changed it so the projectile speed of the sickle increases with her attack speed. So basically at all times you will see her sickle going out and coming back without like throwing out multiple sickles. We'll see how that works for her. Merlin getting a bit of a nerf. He's getting decreased scaling on his Frostbolt from 60 to 55%. And Radiate is getting a change, which they said isn't really a nerf so much as trying to make it more consistent with how it acts, how it animates. It's getting decreased time between ticks from 0.5 seconds to 0.25, and a change in damage per tick, which is a nerf. The change is a nerf, but because they decrease the time, which is kind of a buff, they kind of balance out. So the total goes from 40 to 200 plus 120 to 48 to 240 plus 144. So it's kind of overall a buff. Nausea, I think they're promising to finally fix a little bit of nausea here. And they want to make Nausea more of a jungler. And they talked about in the patch notes show how they're always afraid to change Nausea because he becomes support if they do too much. So one thing they did is they've changed his 2 so that it no longer heals based on a percentage of your max health, but rather heals flat health plus 10% of your physical power per stack. That'll make him more appealing to junglers and less appealing to supports, because then you can't just, stack health and get a nice heal off. Armillary Sash will no longer be able to crit, which is a huge change. Increased damage, though, from 70 to 190 to 70 to 270, and increased scaling from 100 to 150. Windfire Wheels, the ultimate. They didn't say in here. I apologize. They didn't say it here, but they did in the patch notes show that they're changing the 2 to be more consistent in its animations. Right now, there's this weird bug where you do like an extra basic attack that does nothing, and I'm assuming they're getting rid of that. Windfire Wheels increases the beads window for Windfire Wheels, so basically you'll have more of a chance to react to that ult, but Nausea, if you can get it off, will gain 20 up to 40 protections for 5 seconds after he lands. This doesn't count if they cleanse it, doesn't count if you miss. You have to land after going up in the air, and you'll get protections, which is great. Gives him a chance to get out of danger. All right, Raijin. Percussive Storm has a decreased cooldown from 10 seconds to 9 seconds. Raiju has a decreased cooldown from starting at 16 to 12. Now it's 14 to 10. That's huge. That's a big deal. Getting Raiju off even more is going to be big damage numbers for Raijin. Thunder Crash. Increased scaling on lightning and thunder damage from 20 to 30%, 40 to 60% total. All right, Astro Barrage got the same treatment on Rama that Hachiman's ult did. You can no longer fire other abilities while exiting the ultimate earlier than intended. So you're going to have to wait for the ultimate, for him to land from the ultimate and finish the animation before you can dash. Whereas before you could just like dash basically as soon as you touch the ground and you didn't have to wait for the animation to end. So that is definitely a nerf for Rama, especially when he's using the ult to get away. When you do that, you like quick ult, cancel it, run away, that kind of thing. You're not going to be able to do that as fast. So it's definitely a nerf for him, but they said that's okay because he's doing pretty well. Soul is getting Unstable Manifestation, increased attack speed from 1 to 1.2%, 25% to 30% total. And Stellar Burst is getting increased damage from 35 to 40%, 70 to 80% total. So Soul kind of fell off towards the end of Season 7, so they wanted to change that. And that's pretty much it for items, gods, and the new Conquest map. There is a Season 8 roadmap here where they talk about the upcoming gods, but again, this is the down and dirty patch notes, so we're not talking about any of that. You can look it up on Smite Game, and I'll have the link in the description of this YouTube video. Or you could just pause the video and read what's here right now. The next 2 gods are Tiamat and Gilgamesh, which is pretty cool. And you should go to the Smite Game Twitter to see their new trailer for those 2. Anyway, thank you for joining me. Thank you for listening. I hope you're as excited as I am about Season 8. This all sounds pretty cool. And we will see you in the future with more content. Thanks, guys.